So hi, Tim Two Wheels here. On today's video, I'm going to be installing a set of 2-inch pivoting ROX risers on my 2017 R1200 GSA. Now, there are several different versions. In fact, ROX makes 4 different models of risers to fit this bike. And these parts will fit 2013 and newer R1200 GSAs. I'm not sure about the newer R1250, if it's still got the 1¼ inch handlebars. But that's the difference. At 2013, when they went to the water-cooled GS and GSA, they changed to a 1¼ inch diameter handlebar, which you need to make sure you have the right part number for this. Now, for the risers that I'm installing today, there is a link in the description below to Amazon that has the exact part that I'm installing today. If you have any questions, you can go to the ROX website, and they have a chart on there to find the exact riser part number that you need for your bike. And you can also order them directly from ROX if you want to. So today I'm installing the 2-inch pivoting risers on my bike because that's the one I wanted. I wanted the capability to pivot and get the exact fit that I wanted to. They also make a 2-inch pivoting anti-vibe model, which is supposed to help remove some of the vibrations from the handlebars, which I've never really had a problem with, so I'm not going to spend the money for anti-vibe. And they also make what they call a 1½ inch bar back. It's a fixed riser that brings your bar up about 1¼ inch and then sets it back about 1 inch. And then lastly, they make just the 1½ inch block riser, which just brings your bar up 1½ inches from the OEM position. No pivot, no setback, no nothing. So the other question I typically get about bar risers is that with a 2-inch riser, do you have to replace the control cables? Now, some bikes you may. On my KLR, I did not. I just rerouted the cables, and those were ROX pivoting risers just like this. On the GSA, ROX gives you a nice document that shows you how to reroute those cables outside of your fork tubes to allow plenty of room for when you're at full lock on the handlebars without any binding. So you can keep your OEM cables. You do need to reroute them slightly, but it's super easy to do, and the document shows you how. Now, if you're curious about what that entails before buying the bars, ROX has that PDF on their website. I have a link below to that document if you want to look at it and see what it's going to take before buying the risers and putting them on your bike. So the second and last thing I want to talk about before we get started is that bar risers, like oil and everything else, can be slightly controversial. Some people think they're the greatest thing ever. Some people think that they are just useless and you don't need to spend money on bar risers. I happen to think that they're both right. It just depends on how tall you are. For taller riders like me, I'm 6'4". I also have a long torso and long arms. When I'm standing up, even on the GSA, I still have to lean over quite a bit in order to get my hands securely on the handlebars. I can ride straight up if my fingertips are just touching the grips, but I'm not comfortable with that. So that's why I'm going with the risers. So for taller riders, it can make a big difference and add a lot of comfort to your ride. Now, if you're not a taller rider, you're right, you don't need bar risers. They probably are a waste of money. At the end of the day, it all really depends on fitting your bike to you and making it comfortable for you to ride. So you be the judge as to whether you need risers or not. All right, so that's enough talk. Let's go ahead and get started installing these. It's a pretty simple process, but this is a quick video if you want to see how it's done. So let's get started. includes a nice set of directions for specifically for how to route your cables on a water-cooled BMW R1200 GS GSA. So you do need to remove these caps, and you are going to need to remove the forks from the top of the triple tree and drop those down in order to be able to route your cables through. But with those in there, they will bind, so don't try to shortcut this step, because if you do, your cables are going to bind. You're not going to be able to go to full lock. It's going to be hard on the cables. It's going to put unnecessary stress on your throttle and brake and clutch cables, etc. And plus, you won't have the same maneuverability in an off-road situation or even on-road that you need to have. These should work out. Slide right down. Just be careful. And then move that cable to the inside. And bring it back up. I'm just doing the same thing on this other side. Sliding the fork tube down enough to get the cable to the outside. And then bringing that fork tube back up. Putting the nut back in. I'm just tightening these up, but I will torque them to spec. You want these tightened up enough to where it holds them in place, but where you can still adjust them before you lock it down for good. And I'm going to go ahead and now raise the handlebars up and get it set back. So we use the bolts that came, the M8 bolts that came with the Torx, or I'm sorry, with the ROX risers down on the base, on the clearance caps. So up on the handlebars, you keep the factory OEM caps as well as reuse the factory bolts on that. And I'm just getting these started in here by hand. Of course, we'll get everything adjusted and then tightened down. Okay, then using our T45 Torx bit, I'm just going to snug these up. Again, we want to be able to make our adjustments before locking everything down. So right now the risers are sticking up pretty much vertical. I don't think that's how I'm going to leave them. Probably want to bring them back just a little bit. Alright, so from a standing position, this already feels a lot better as far as bringing the bars up into my hand. If I get on the balls of my feet on the pegs, and then as before, my hands were about like this to be comfortable standing. I now have the bars firmly in the grip while having my back straight. So that's going to be much better. Now from a sitting riding position, they seem to be a little too much upright. So I think I may bring it back just a little bit. Yeah, that's still much better. And even sitting, that's good. Wow, that makes a nice big difference. So yeah, I like that sitting and standing. I'll need to adjust my levers, the angle of my levers a little bit so that they're a little more, I think in a bit more of a downward position. So that when I'm standing, they're a little more natural, but that's really not bad, just like that. Okay, so I think in that position, I can go ahead and tighten it down. Everything is well centered. All right, good. So let's tighten everything down. Check, as you can see now, might need to free up the cable on this side. There's a couple of cable ties under here they want, ROX recommends removing, but there's certainly no binding. I'm going full lock now to the left, as you can see here, and this cable is still free. It's not being twisted or bound in any way. Just need to free up the cable ties up under here so that it can turn. Okay, so I hope that was helpful in showing you how to install these. Again, it's pretty simple and straightforward. So rerouting the cables is probably the most difficult task, and it's even not that hard. So after looking at the footage, I realized that the angle of my camera was not very good at showing you how I rerouted those cables, and I do apologize for that. But essentially, just follow the documentation that ROX sends you. And again, you can look at it. The link is below in the description if you want to look at it beforehand. But it's just undoing the top nut off of that fork tube and the triple tree, drop it down, put your cable on the outside of the fork tube, bring it up, put the nut back on it. Super simple. And there's a couple of cable ties further back that ROX recommends that you snip to free up the cables and make it so they don't bind. And then that's really it. And then just torque those nuts back to the spec and put the caps on them. Hope this is helpful. This is Tim Two Wheels, and that's how I did it. Thanks for watching.